The first time the Vroth arrived on Earth was swift and brutal. The sky turned dark as their massive ships descended like vultures circling their prey. Humanity had no chance to prepare for such a force. They were outmatched in every way. Their weapons were outdated, their armies scattered, their cities unprotected as the Vroth unleashed their shock troops. With terrifying precision, Earth's military tried to respond, but it was hopeless. The Vroth didn't just fight with superior weapons, they fought with a ruthless efficiency that seemed to predict every move the humans made. The invasion lasted mere hours before the Vroth had established full control over Earth's major capitals and military bases. There was no time for resistance, no time to mount any sort of defense. The humans were powerless against the Vroth's overwhelming strength. Cities burned as alien warships hovered overhead, unleashing waves of destruction. But what the Vroth didn't expect was the quiet resistance that came from the people of Earth itself. In the wake of the invasion, the Vroth's commander, General Vrock, gave an order that would reverberate throughout the galaxy. He called for a public execution of a human soldier as a demonstration of their total dominance over this insignificant planet. The chosen soldier was Sergeant Alex Carter, a man of simple means and humble origin. But to the Vroth, he was no more than an expendable pawn in their game. They captured him in a raid and broadcasted his capture across the galaxy. Alex stood in front of a crowd of thousands on the scorched earth, ground his hands, bound his head, held high his eyes, not showing fear, but something more defiant in the face of inevitable death. He knew what they wanted. They wanted to break the spirit of humanity. They wanted to show the galaxy that Earth's resistance was futile. They wanted to send a message to every species watching that no one would dare defy the might of the Vroth Empire. The camera zoomed in on his face as the executioner approached, his weapon raised for the final blow. But in that moment, something happened that the Vroth couldn't have predicted. The people of Earth watched, and they did not bow, they did not cry, they did not beg for mercy. Instead, they saw their brother, their comrade, standing tall and unbroken in front of them. And in that moment, something stirred within the hearts of every human on the planet. A spark ignited, and a decision was made that no alien empire could understand. The execution went ahead as planned. Alex Carter fell to the ground lifeless, his body sprawled out on the cold dirt. But the response from Earth was not the silence of defeat. It was a roar of defiance that echoed across the entire planet. No longer were the people of Earth divided. No longer were they weak and scattered. They had a common purpose. Now they had a single goal: vengeance. But what the Vroth didn't know was that in their arrogance, they had created something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. They had awoken a force, a resolve in humanity that would not break under pressure. They had made the fatal mistake of underestimating the human spirit. The Vroth believed their brutal act had crushed the spirit of humanity, but they were wrong. Across the globe, something extraordinary was happening. In the wake of Alex Carter's death, a quiet but intense fire began to spread from one heart to the next. No one could ignore it. No one could stand unaffected by the image of that soldier's defiance. In the face of death, the world had never seen such unity before. Different countries, who had once been divided by politics, history, and old grudges, now saw a common enemy and a shared purpose. Humanity would no longer be fragmented. It began with small gestures: a mother telling her children the story of Alex's courage, a teacher showing the video of his final moments to their class, not to mourn, but to inspire. An entire generation of children grew up in the shadow of that day, carrying with them an unspoken promise to protect their home, no matter the cost. Governments worldwide soon realized that their old systems were no longer fit for the new world. The Vroth had thrust them into what was needed now was not bureaucracy or diplomacy, but a single, unified strategy. The first steps were small but significant. World leaders came together not for summits or negotiations, but for one singular goal: the survival of humanity. They set aside their differences and pooled their resources. Technology was shared without hesitation. The military powers of nations that had once viewed each other with suspicion now trained together as one. The global effort to fight back was unprecedented in its speed and scale. Behind closed doors, the real work began. The best minds of humanity were called upon to reverse engineer what the Vroth had left behind. Their technology was strange and alien, But Earth's scientists were determined to make sense of it. They worked night and day in secret laboratories across the globe, studying the Vroth's ships, weapons, and devices with a single question in mind: how could they use these tools to strike back? The early days were filled with frustration. Alien technology was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Each piece of technology seemed to bend the rules of physics and reason. They were like children trying to assemble an intricate puzzle without knowing the picture on the box. But Earth's people were nothing if not determined. Their minds were sharp, their creativity boundless, and slowly, bit by bit, pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. The first breakthrough came when Dr. Lina Vasquez, an aerospace engineer from Argentina, managed to adapt a piece of Vroth propulsion technology to create a new kind of engine, one capable of reaching speeds beyond what humanity's best spacecraft could achieve. With this newfound technology, humanity now had the ability to reach beyond Earth's atmosphere faster and more efficiently than ever before. Simultaneously, Earth's top military tacticians began formulating a new kind of warfare that no one had seen before. It was guerrilla and conventional forces blended into a seamless strategy. It wasn't just about firepower. It was about using their knowledge of the land, their adaptability, and their ability to think outside the box to wear down the superior might of the Vroth. But more than anything else, humanity's greatest strength lay in the hearts of its people. People from every corner of the globe, from every walk of life, became a part of the movement to defend their home. They didn't need orders to act. They didn't need a title or rank. They only needed the knowledge that they were no longer alone, that the world had come together as one. The Vroth had made a fatal error in thinking that killing one human would break Earth's spirit. They had ignited a spark that would soon become an unstoppable fire. Now humanity was ready to strike back, ready to show the galaxy that they would never kneel to anyone. While the galaxy continued to watch, thinking Earth would remain powerless and beaten, humanity was quietly building its strength in ways the Vroth had never expected. The world had come together, but in the quietest corners of the Earth, the true response to the Vroth's brutality was taking shape. This was no longer about surviving. This was about ensuring that Earth would not just survive, but would rise stronger than ever before. In hidden underground bunkers, massive labs that once housed simple research facilities now became fortresses of human ingenuity. The best engineers, scientists, and soldiers worked around the clock, piecing together the alien technology that the Vroth had so carelessly left behind. It wasn't easy at first. The materials were strange and incomprehensible. They defied all logic. But human determination is a force more powerful than any alien weapon. Slowly, the pieces began to fall into place. The first real breakthrough came when Dr. Jonas Greenfield, an unassuming physicist from a small town in Canada, cracked the code to the Vroth's energy shields. He had spent months poring over the data, trying to understand how their shields worked. And then one night, after an exhausting stretch of work, it clicked. The shields weren't impenetrable. They had a weakness, an anomaly in the energy flow. When struck by the right frequency, the shields could be disrupted for a short but critical period of time. Humanity's weapons development quickly adapted to this knowledge. Earth's weapons engineers quickly built devices that could emit the necessary frequency, and for the first time since the Vroth had arrived, humanity had a weapon that could pierce their defenses. It wasn't a single ship or a large cannon. It was something smaller and simpler, a portable device that soldiers could carry into battle. Meanwhile, across the globe, every nation began to mobilize its resources, some focused on military might, others on creating technological marvels. Humanity was no longer just defending its home. It was preparing for the day it would strike back. Earth's armies grew more cohesive, with veterans and new recruits alike undergoing training in advanced warfare strategies. This was no longer just about resisting. It was about retaking control. Then came the next leap forward. Humanity's space program, once relegated to dreams of exploration, now became a critical component of their survival. Engineers and pilots began adapting human spacecraft to use Vroth technology. These ships were not just built to fight in Earth's atmosphere, but to engage the alien forces in the vast reaches of space. Humanity had once lacked the means to defend themselves beyond their atmosphere, but now they had the technology to strike back from orbit. In the dark of space, humanity's first prototype ship, a sleek vessel dubbed Revenant, broke through the limits of Earth's atmosphere on its maiden voyage, designed with the newly adapted propulsion systems and equipped with the disruptive energy weapons humanity had developed. The ship was a symbol of what humanity had become, and the first proof that Earth could fight back in a way no one had thought possible. The crew of Revenant, led by Captain Naomi Tanaka, a decorated officer from the Pacific Rim, performed a series of successful tests with the ship's new weapons, taking out several small Vroth ships in deep space. The victory was minor, but the message was clear. Humanity was no longer a passive target, it was a force to be reckoned with. Back on Earth, the preparations reached their peak. More and more Vroth technology was incorporated into the growing human arsenal. Earth's military forces were becoming something different entirely. They were no longer just human armies, they were an amalgamation of human creativity and alien might, and they were about to show the galaxy just how much they had learned. The quiet buildup was nearly complete. The foundations of Earth's new resistance were laid and ready. Now only one thing remained. The first strike against the Vroth would soon begin, and when it did, the galaxy would be shaken to its core. The moment had arrived. Earth's first coordinated strike against the Vroth was set into motion with military precision, but it wasn't going to be a traditional attack. Humanity had learned from the Vroth's own tactics, and they intended to strike where it would hurt the most. There would be no flashy displays of raw power, no grandiose speeches. This strike would be quiet, efficient, and lethal, just like the human spirit itself. Every step had been calculated, every move planned with surgical precision. The target was a critical Vroth supply depot, located in a remote region of space. It housed vital resources for their war machine, including the fuel for their massive fleets and the materials necessary to repair their damaged ships. If humanity could disrupt this supply line, it would throw a wrench into the Vroth's entire operation. But getting there wouldn't be easy. The Vroth had set up defenses in the area, and the fleet that guarded it was formidable. However, Earth had an advantage they hadn't expected: the element of surprise. A fleet of human ships, led by the Revenant and 3 newly commissioned warships, left Earth's atmosphere undetected, traveling under the radar of Vroth sensors. With the newly acquired Vroth technology, the humans had modified their ships to hide their energy signatures, making them nearly invisible to the enemy. Captain Naomi Tanaka, who had proven herself during the tests, commanded the fleet. Her crew, a mix of seasoned veterans and young recruits, stood ready for what they knew would be a perilous mission. As they approached the Vroth depot, tension was palpable. For most of the crew, this was their first real mission. They were no longer on Earth, no longer in the comfort of their home planet, but in the cold vastness of space, facing an enemy who had once been thought invincible. But Tanaka had faith in her team. They had trained for this moment, and they had the tools to win. The attack began without warning. The human fleet used their stealth advantage to slip through the Vroth's defenses undetected. They deployed drones, small, agile craft designed to disable enemy ships without detection. These drones infiltrated the perimeter of the Vroth supply depot, launching electromagnetic pulses that disabled the Vroth's weapon systems. In a matter of moments, the once impenetrable defenses were crippled. Then came the main assault. The Revenant and its accompanying warships fired in perfect unison, using the disruptor technology that Earth had developed to breach the Vroth's energy shields. The shields flickered and then collapsed as the ships launched precision strikes against the depot's energy core, igniting a series of explosions that sent shockwaves through the surrounding space. The Vroth fleet guarding the depots scrambled, trying to retaliate, but it was too late. Their weapons were offline, their ships in disarray. Earth's fleet, well coordinated and calm under pressure, continued their assault with ruthless efficiency. In less than an hour, the supply depot was destroyed, and the Vroth's critical resource line was severed. As the fleet made its retreat, Tanaka could feel the weight of what they had just accomplished. This wasn't just a victory. It was a message to the Vroth, and to every empire in the galaxy watching from the shadows. Humanity had struck back, and they were not only capable of surviving, they were capable of winning. The impact of this first strike reverberated through the galaxy like a shockwave. The Vroth, who had once thought of Earth as an insignificant speck in the universe, were now faced with the harsh reality that humanity was no longer the weak, defenseless species they had thought. Earth had drawn the first blood, and it would not be the last. The galaxy was about to learn just how dangerous an underestimated species could be. As Earth's fleet returned home, a new sense of confidence swept across the planet. The war had truly begun, and this time, humanity was ready to fight. The aftermath of Earth's first strike reverberated across the galaxy like an electric pulse, spreading from system to system, from one planetary capital to the next. The Vroth had not anticipated such a bold, decisive blow. In fact, no one had. The galaxy's many factions, who had long watched from the sidelines, were stunned by what humanity had just achieved. A species once considered primitive and inconsequential had crippled the Vroth's supply chain in a matter of hours. News of the attack spread quickly, and with it, disbelief. To the Vroth, who had conquered countless worlds without so much as breaking a sweat, the idea that humans could launch a successful operation against them was an insult to their pride. But there was more at stake now than wounded pride. Earth had sent a message. They were no longer an easy target. They were not helpless before the Vroth's superior technology. And in that single, quiet moment of calculated violence, humanity had shown that they could and would fight back. The Vroth Empire, reeling from the unexpected strike, scrambled to respond. Their fleets were not designed to operate in a defensive manner, especially not against an enemy as unpredictable and adaptive as humanity had proven to be. General Vrock, the Vroth's cold and calculating leader, ordered immediate countermeasures. He demanded a full-scale assault on Earth to crush any notion that humans could ever challenge the might of his people. But even as the Vroth began assembling their forces for retaliation, other galactic powers began to take notice. The Xenar Alliance, a collective of technologically advanced alien species, had long regarded humanity as an insignificant and unworthy race. Now, with the Vroth's humiliation spreading across their collective networks, there was a growing sense of doubt. If Earth could stand against the Vroth, what would that mean for their own power? Would the humans one day challenge them as well? The Xenar were not the only ones questioning their position. The Excellinar, an aggressive and war-hungry race, had watched from a distance for centuries as the Vroth expanded their empire. The Excellinar saw a shifting balance of power, and they were not keen on waiting to see how the Vroth would handle Earth. War had always been their language, and a divided galaxy was a galaxy ripe for conquest. They began to make their own calculations, wondering if now was the time to strike. On Earth, the victory was celebrated, but it was not without its costs. The damage to the Vroth supply depot had been significant, but it wasn't a decisive blow in the larger war. Earth knew that the Vroth would respond with everything they had. The military began gearing up for a long fight, one that would take them beyond their home planet and into the heart of enemy space. They had proven their ability to strike first, but would they be able to hold their ground when the Vroth came in full force? Humanity's leaders convened to discuss the next steps. They couldn't afford to sit back and wait. They needed to continue the momentum, to keep the pressure on the Vroth and any other powers who might be watching. Earth was no longer playing defense. It was moving into offense, striking from the shadows when necessary and taking the initiative when the opportunity arose. The age of complacency was over. The age of human ingenuity and courage had begun. And in the far reaches of the galaxy, the quiet whispers of fear began to grow louder. The Vroth had made a fatal mistake when they killed one human. Now, The galaxy was witnessing the terrifying potential of an entire species that had been underestimated for far too long. Earth was no longer just a target, it was a force to be reckoned with. The Vroth were not ones to be defeated easily. Despite the shock of their unexpected loss, they quickly rallied their forces. General Vrak, humiliated but unyielding, ordered the largest military assembly in the history of their empire. The Vroth were determined to prove to the galaxy that Earth's defiance was nothing more than a fleeting moment, a lucky strike they could easily recover from. The full might of their war machine would be unleashed upon humanity. In the Vroth Command Center, warships the size of cities were prepped for battle, and fleets were called from across the galaxy to reinforce their lines. They had learned their lesson after the loss at the supply depot. They would not underestimate humanity again. This time, they would strike Earth with an overwhelming force, obliterating any trace of human resistance. The Vroth Empire's message would be clear. Earth would be crushed under the weight of its hubris. As the Vroth prepared for war, Earth's leaders were not blind to the storm that was gathering. The victory over the supply depot had been a powerful symbol, but it was also a beacon that the Vroth could not ignore. If humanity was to survive, it would need to outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast its more powerful adversary. Earth's military command began to draft strategies with one clear directive: don't fight the Vroth on their terms. Humanity was no longer in a defensive posture. The idea of simply hiding behind planetary shields or waiting for reinforcements was now obsolete. Instead, the key to victory was to strike swiftly, decisively, and unpredictably. Using their growing fleet of ships and the advanced weapons reverse-engineered from the Vroth's own technology, humanity set its sights on something much more audacious: a counterattack into the very heart of Vroth-controlled space. Earth's fleet, now stronger than it had ever been, prepared to face the Vroth head-on. The Revenant, Captain Tanaka's flagship, was joined by new ships that incorporated human innovation with Vroth technology. They were designed not just for combat, but for stealth, speed, and precision. These ships would infiltrate enemy space, strike key targets, and then disappear before the Vroth could regroup. Humanity's war would be fought in the shadows, a series of surgical strikes designed to cripple their enemies without giving them the chance to retaliate. Captain Tanaka knew this mission would be the most dangerous of all. The Vroth's retaliation was going to come in waves, but if they could execute this plan successfully, they could force the Vroth to rethink their strategy. It was not just a matter of winning. It was a matter of shifting the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The first target was a Vroth flagship, Oblivion's Edge, a massive warship that commanded a fleet in a critical region of Vroth space. The Revenant and its strike force would infiltrate the area, sabotage its weapon systems, and then disable the flagship before it could call reinforcements. The success of this operation would not only cripple the Vroth's immediate ability to respond, but it would also send a resounding message to the galaxy that humanity was no longer to be taken lightly. As Earth's ships slipped past the Vroth's outer defenses, they moved like phantoms in the dark, avoiding detection at all costs. Tanaka's heart raced as the Revenant neared its target. The crew had trained for this moment for months, but there was no way to predict what would happen next. They would be fighting not just for survival, but for a chance to reshape the future of their entire species. The strike came swiftly and precisely. The Revenant unleashed its disruptor weapons, frying the systems that powered the Vroth warship's shields. As the ship's defenses crumpled, the human fleet opened fire, launching devastatingly accurate shots that tore through the flagship's hull. Within minutes, Oblivion's Edge was nothing more than a burning wreck, crippled and unable to function. The Vroth fleet, scattered and disorganized, had no time to retaliate. Earth's forces, having completed their mission, slipped away into the darkness of space, leaving behind a galaxy that would never view humanity in the same way again. The counterattack had been a success, and the Vroth, stunned and enraged, realized that the war was no longer a one-sided affair. The scales had shifted. The galaxy would soon know that Earth was no longer just a target, it was a contender. The Vroth Empire, once a dominant and unchallenged force, was now fighting a war it had never anticipated. The devastation of their supply lines, the crippling of their flagship, and the growing resistance from Earth had shaken them to their core. The Vroth, known for their ruthlessness and overwhelming military power, now found themselves on the back foot. What had started as a quick and decisive campaign to crush humanity had turned into a drawn-out struggle that threatened their very empire. General Vrock, still reeling from the humiliation of Earth's counterattack, called for an emergency war council. His commanders sat around the table, their faces grim as they analyzed the deteriorating situation. The Vroth had lost critical resources, and their forces were spread thin trying to deal with the unexpected resurgence of human power. More importantly, the morale of their soldiers had begun to falter. No matter how many planets they conquered, no matter how many worlds they destroyed, they could no longer ignore the growing possibility that they might lose this war. The galaxy, once united in their fear and respect for the Vroth, began to shift. Alien species that had once sided with them were now reconsidering their alliances. The Xenar, the Excellenor, and other galactic powers who had once seen the Vroth as the uncontested rulers of the stars were now questioning whether they were on the winning side. Whispers of rebellion spread through the fringes of Vroth-controlled space, and entire systems began to defect, fearing that the Vroth's power was no longer as invincible as they had once thought. Meanwhile, on Earth, the pressure to keep up the momentum weighed heavily on humanity's leaders. The success of their recent strikes had sent ripples across the galaxy, but they knew that the hardest part was still ahead of them. The Vroth were relentless, and now more than ever, they were desperate. Earth's forces would need to be ready for the inevitable counterattack. The Vroth would not go down quietly, but even in the face of this uncertainty, Earth's resolve remained unshaken. Humanity had faced the worst of it, and had come out stronger for it. In the heart of Vroth space, the cracks were beginning to show. The once unified war fleets were now disjointed, their communications severed, and their logistics fractured. The once mighty Vroth warships, which had struck terror into the hearts of every species, were now being hunted down by Earth's increasingly sophisticated forces. Humans, using their advanced knowledge of Vroth technology, had found ways to track the alien ships through the smallest anomalies in their communications and movement patterns. Vroth ships that had once been able to disappear into the vastness of space were now being hunted by human warships, caught in webs of technology they couldn't fully comprehend. As Vroth fleets began to splinter, General Vrock made a fateful decision. In an attempt to regain control and show the galaxy that his empire was still a force to be feared, he authorized a massive retaliatory strike, a full-scale assault on Earth. It was his last hope to break the human resistance. The Vroth would throw everything they had left into one final desperate push to wipe humanity from existence. But as the Vroth fleets gathered for this final assault, the full extent of their vulnerabilities became apparent. Their supply chains were in chaos, their leadership fractured, and their forces spread too thin across the galaxy. Earth's intelligence network, now more advanced than ever, had intercepted the Vroth's plans and was ready. The final battle between Earth and the Vroth was approaching, but it was not going to be fought on the Vroth's terms. The galaxy was watching, and they were beginning to see the true power of humanity. The Vroth, once feared across the stars, were now the ones fighting for survival. And Earth, the once weak planet, had become the true threat to their empire's survival. As the Vroth prepared for one last stand, it was clear to all that the Vroth Empire had reached its breaking point. Their collapse was inevitable, and humanity had played the role of the catalyst that would forever change the balance of power in the galaxy. The final assault was coming, and the galaxy held its breath. The Vroth, once an unstoppable force that had conquered countless worlds, were now desperately preparing for a war they could not win. Their empire, once vast and seemingly invincible, was crumbling from within. General Vrock, the commander who had led them through many victories, could feel the weight of failure pressing down on him. His forces were scattered, their morale shattered, and the might of his fleet, once a symbol of dominance, was now a fractured shadow of its former glory. Earth had not only survived but had thrived in the chaos, adapting to every challenge, learning from every defeat, and using the Vroth's own technology against them. What had once been a desperate fight for survival had transformed into an offensive campaign that now threatened to topple the very foundation of the Vroth Empire. The galaxy that had watched in silence as the Vroth expanded their reach was now watching as a new power arose, one that had defied every expectation. In the heart of Vroth space, the final battle began. Earth's fleet, now a formidable force, engaged the remnants of the Vroth warships in a series of rapid strikes. Led by Captain Naomi Tanaka aboard the Revenant, Earth's forces outmaneuvered the Vroth at every turn, exploiting their vulnerabilities with devastating precision. Ships that had once terrorized the galaxy were now being torn apart by the very same tactics that had first shattered their dominance. Humanity had become the predator, and the Vroth were the prey. The battle wasn't just fought in space, it was fought in the hearts and minds of the people. The soldiers aboard Earth's ships were not just fighting for survival anymore, they were fighting for the future of their world, their families, their freedom. The unity that had been forged in the fire of adversity had become their greatest weapon. Earth's resolve was now the thing that scared the Vroth most. They had underestimated the human spirit, and now they were paying the price. In the final moments of the battle, General Vrak issued a last-ditch order to retreat. His fleets, already in disarray, were no longer capable of mounting a coherent defense. The once proud Vroth had lost control of the battlefield, and their empire was collapsing in real time. As Earth's ships descended on the last remaining Vroth strongholds, the general realized what had become clear to the galaxy. The Vroth Empire was no longer the dominant force it had once been. The war had been lost, and the galaxy would never be the same. On Earth, the celebrations began. The people who had once been oppressed and fragmented now stood united in victory. Humanity had not just survived. It had thrived, and it had struck a blow that would echo through the stars. Their message to the galaxy was clear. Humanity would no longer be a footnote in galactic history. They would no longer be victims of oppression. The future would belong to them, not the empires that sought to crush them. As Earth's leaders addressed their people, the weight of their victory was undeniable. They had beaten back the Vroth and shattered the myth that any species, no matter how powerful, was invincible. Humanity had proven itself capable of far more than anyone had thought possible. But even as they celebrated, there was an awareness that the galaxy was still a vast and unpredictable place. There were other powers out there, other species watching with interest. Humanity had secured its place as a force to be reckoned with, but the war for the future was just beginning. One thing was certain: no empire, no matter how ancient or powerful, could ever ignore Earth again. The fall of the Vroth marked the beginning of a new chapter for humanity. And this time, they would write their own story, a story that would shake the foundations of the galaxy forever.